Hello and welcome to Blue Spoon Veggie. I'm a huge fan of making full use of the freezer to save time and money, so in this video I'm going to take a look at some useful veggie foods you can freeze and how to freeze them. Vegetables seem like an appropriate food to start with, so let's get freezing. I like to freeze bags of cubed veg ready for cooking. A soup or stew mix is handy to have and can include simply carrots and celery as I have here, or add in other vegetables like parsnips, fennel or peppers. This saves getting out the chopping board every time you want to cook something. Squashes and pumpkins can be peeled, de-seeded, chopped into cubes and then frozen in bags. You can also freeze cooked squash. Halve the squash and remove the seeds. Then brush with olive oil and season with salt and pepper. Roast for around 45 minutes until the flesh is soft. Roasted squash can be added straight from the freezer when you're making pasta dishes, chilli and soup. Wait for the squash to cool completely, then scoop out the flesh and freeze in bags. Press the squash down, squeezing as much air as possible out of the bag. Then freeze on a board or tray to keep the squash nice and flat and make the frozen bag an easier shape to store in the freezer. Mediterranean vegetables like aubergine and courgettes are best cooked thoroughly before being frozen so they don't become watery. I like to make Mediterranean veg into ratatouille, then freeze flat in bags. To freeze peppers, simply slice or dice, then freeze flat in large freezer bags. For roast potatoes, peel, then cut into chunks before bringing to the boil and simmering for 4 minutes. Drain the potatoes, then return to the pan for 5 minutes to dry out a bit and give the pan a good shake to slightly roughen up the edges of the potatoes. Then transfer to a tray lined with parchment paper, allowing a little space between the pieces so they don't freeze together. Cover and freeze until solid. Then transfer into labelled bags, pressing out as much air as you can before sealing. You can roast these straight from frozen in hot oil with salt and pepper for around 45 minutes. I think the texture is actually better after the potatoes have been frozen, nice and fluffy. You can also parboil parsnips before freezing, then roast in the same way as parboiled potatoes. I like to pop a couple of large potatoes in the oven, if I have it on anyway, and then freeze the baked potatoes for another day. Bake for around an hour, leave to cool completely, then wrap in foil before freezing in a box or bag. Just leave them in the fridge overnight to defrost and you can heat them in the oven for around 20 minutes. Homemade gnocchi can be frozen after boiling and being coated in oil. Simply leave overnight in the fridge to defrost before pan frying in some butter the next day. Potatoes can also be cut into wedges, parboiled as for roast potatoes, then mixed with oil and seasonings and frozen on an oven tray. Roast straight from frozen. To freeze sweet potatoes, just peel and cube, then freeze in a box or bag. The cubes can be added straight into soups or roasted from frozen. In addition to stocking up on some of the wide variety of green veg available pre-frozen, I also like to prep some green veg and freeze it at home. I think home-prepped green beans taste much fresher than ones from the supermarket, and it's simple to do this yourself. After you've cut off both ends of the beans, place in a pan, bring to the boil, then simmer for 2 minutes. This brief cooking time will help keep the beans nice and green after freezing. Drain the beans and transfer to a bowl of ice and water. This will cool the beans abruptly and keep them crunchy. Drain once again, then dry out as much as you can on paper towel. Transfer to a freezer bag and press out as much air as you can before sealing the bag and freezing. Other green veg like mange tout and sugar snap peas can be frozen in the same way. Simmer these for only 1 minute before plunging into an ice bath, drying and freezing in bags. Freeze soft herbs like coriander and parsley in ice cube trays. When frozen, transfer to a bag and then use straight from the freezer to add flavour to curries and soups. Having pre-chopped onions and shallots in the freezer is a gift to yourself for when you're tired or busy. Simply chop and spread out on a lightly oiled tray. Wrap up the tray well, and when the onion is completely frozen, transfer it to a bag so you can retrieve your tray. The same method can be followed for shallots and garlic. I'm doing some crushed garlic and some sliced to give options for different recipes. Once frozen solid, they slide easily off the oil tray and can be kept frozen in a box or bag. Now on to beans. If you prefer to cook with dried beans rather than using canned, soak and cook the beans according to the pack instructions, then portion up and freeze. I freeze in bags of 2 portions and then add straight into chilli and other meals. It's useful to batch process fresh ginger, so it's always ready to add to recipes. Peel and chop into chunks, then blend with a little water and freeze in ice cube trays. Use the cubes straight away or transfer to a bag when completely solid. You can slice chilies before freezing, but I just pop them in the freezer whole, then chop off or grate what I need while they're still frozen. Let's turn to freezing fruit now. Fruits like blueberries, cherries and raspberries are good to have in the freezer for adding to smoothies and for baking. Save a little money by buying a few packs when they're on offer and popping them in the freezer. Avocados can be peeled and cubed and then a little added to smoothies for a lovely creamy texture. Tropical fruits like bananas and mango can just be peeled and sliced or cubed. Add them to smoothies or use in baking and hot desserts. Freeze cubed pineapple, then defrost and use to top pizza or serve with ice cream. I like to keep some lemon juice in the freezer. This works for limes too. Freeze the juice in silicone ice trays and then store in a bag so you can reuse your ice tray. Add the cubes to cooking or drinks. If you have an apple tree, or you just bought too many apples, then peel, slice and cook them with a little sugar before freezing them. You can freeze the fruit in foil trays or oven dishes ready to top with crumble. I prefer to freeze the 2 components separately so the crumble doesn't go soft. Many cookie recipes make a large quantity of dough, so pop some of the batch on a freezer tray and transfer to a box or bag once solid. Then just bake straight from frozen. Baked items like muffins or cupcakes are best cooked first and then wrapped individually and frozen. They will defrost overnight in the fridge and be as delicious as when you baked or bought them. Bread freezes fantastically and means reducing wasted slices. Slice and freeze homemade bread, or stock up when your favourite breads are on offer and save a little money. I slice bagels and muffins before freezing so they can be toasted straight from the freezer. Lucky you if you can buy them pre-sliced. Keep blinis and focaccia frozen for sandwiches and snacks. Wraps and other flatbreads are handy to have in the freezer for making up quesadillas or just with a filling for lunch. Garlic bread is another great bread to stock up on when the price is reduced, and these flatbreads make a great pizza base. Cut pre-rolled puff pastry into rectangles and freeze for making tarts or sausage rolls. Now let's take a look at dairy products. When butter and cheese are on sale, I stock up. You can freeze whole packs of butter, but it's also useful to portion up each pack into cubes. Once defrosted, the texture of frozen butter is unchanged and you can use it as normal. Hard cheeses are best grated before freezing, as they tend to become crumbly anyway if frozen in a block. Keep a variety of your favourites for adding to sandwiches or recipes. Cheeses that go off soon after opening, like goat's cheese and feta, can be frozen. I like to slice goat's cheese rounds in half horizontally, ready for grilling, and cube feta, so you can use a little at a time. Another Greek cheese, manuri, can also be frozen and then defrosted in the fridge. Paneer, an Indian cooking cheese, is handy to have cubed in the freezer so it's ready to add straight into curries. To freeze milk, pour out a little from the carton as it will expand once frozen. To defrost, leave in the fridge overnight and give it a good shake to mix it all back together. Freeze whole eggs in large ice cube trays or any other silicone mould to make them easy to extract, then store in freezer bags. If you have spare egg whites left over after using just the yolks, then you can also freeze these in ice cube trays. Lastly, many homemade dishes freeze well too and can be made in large batches so you have a delicious homemade meal to hand. If you freeze homemade dishes like soup and chilli flat on a board or tray, then once they're frozen, you can file them like this and they're easier to access. I like to freeze portions of homemade sauces in small boxes so they can be defrosted or quickly microwaved and served with pasta. I hope you found this video interesting. Please give me a thumbs up if you did. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more recipes and food ideas from Blue Spoon Veggie.